Hello and welcome to today's edition of Daf Yomi, from wherever you're joining me. Today's Daf is Nazir 54b, and let's dive straight in. So I'll just carry on from the previous onward, that paragraph. And in this case, it listed that involve ritual impurity from a corpse. One sprinkles the purification waters upon him on the third and on the seventh day of purification, and he does not negate the enu sosa v'chuno. A Nazirite who was rendered ritually impure by one of the sources of impurity listed in the Mishnah does not negate his early period of Nazirite. He neither shaves for his impurity nor brings the relevant offerings. After his purification, he continues to count the days of his Nazirite. However, the days of his impurity do not count toward his term, and that's the Rambam Sefer Flahich 779. And the earlier days, what does that mean? Ve'enos Sosa es hakodmim. Although he does not forfeit the earlier period, these days of purification do not count towards his Nazirite. Rather, after he is purified, he resumes counting where he left off of his Nazirite, but they are counted as part of his Nazirite term, and he stays counting the rest of his Nazirite to complete the term immediately after his purification, and he has no obligation to sacrifice an offering of impurity for these sources of rich impurity. Actually, they said in ancient tradition that these days of impurity of the Zav in Leviticus 15:1-15, what does that mean? Yomez Hazav v'chulu, the days of a leper's confinement and the days of the impurity of a Zav or Zav count toward the Nazirite term, despite their impurity. This is the halacha put into Moses from Sinai. Rambam Sefer Flahich and Nazir 7:9. And on Zava, Leviticus 15:25-30, and the days of the confinement of a leper before he is confirmed as the full-fledged leper, in Leviticus 13:4-5, count for him toward the period of his Nazirite. The Gemara explains that the term hangings and projections by citing a mission are halot 8:2, and these are the hangings, a tree that overhangs the earth. So what does that mean? Ilan ha-meisech al ha'oretz. All the commentaries agree that this is referring to a tree whose branches are spread apart so they do not form one unbroken cover. The disagreements concern the details of the case. Some commentaries maintain that the branches in question are thinner than a handbreadth and are not positioned close together. As a result, they do not form a tent by Torah law, even if the Nazirite were to walk under each of the branches. Tosfot. Others contend that this is referring to branches that are one handbreadth wide, and the Nazirite walked under some, but not all of them. He is not rendered ritually impure by Torah law because the tree is situated in the public domain, and when there is uncertainty with regard to impurity in the public domain, it is considered pure. Rabbeinu Persi Rashi. Others indicate that the tree does not impart impurity by Torah law because the branches are not strong enough, and therefore it is classified as a shaky tent, and that's the Rambam. And the projections, what does that mean? Paraos, projections. In this case, it was known that there was a grave of a stillborn or an olive bulb from a corpse under one of the stones. However, the identity of that stone is unknown. Consequently, a Nazirite who passes beneath some of the stones remains pure, as this is the case of uncertainty with regard to impurity in the public domain. Are stones. So what does that mean? Sachachos ufraos. The hangings are mentioned in the Mishnah are boughs that extend from trees, while projections are stones that jut out of fences. They are not strong enough to bear a medium-sized cover without bending inward. If they can bear that weight, they impart ritual impurity by Torah law. And that's in the Rambam Sefer Flahich and Nazir 7:6 and Sefer Tahara Hilchot Tumas Meis 13:2. That protrude from a fence. The Mishnah further taught, and the lands of the nations do not render a Nazirite obligated to shave, despite the fact that it is considered ritually impure. The Gemara inquires with regard to the nature of this impurity. A dilemma was raised before the sages. Did the sages decree the land of the nations impure with regard to the air, i.e., is one rendered impure merely by being there, or perhaps they decreed it impure with regard to the earth, i.e., one who touches the ground or overlays it becomes impure? The Gemara suggests common here resolution to that question from the Mishnah, which one lists which lists one who enters the land of the nation states, and one sprinkles on him on the third and on the seventh days. And if you say that the decree was with regard to the heir, why do I need this sprinkling? What does that mean? Mishum avira hazel lamali. The sages initially decreed rich impurity on the earth of the lands of the nations, which is imparted by contact and carrying. Later they extended the decree to its heir, so that anyone who inserts his head and the majority of his body into those lands contacts impurity. However, the heir imparts a lesser degree of impurity. It does not necessitate sprinkling on the third and seventh days. Rather, one merely has to immerse and wait for sunset. Similarly, it is not necessary to burn teruma and offerings due to this impurity. For this reason, the Rambam rules that the halacha of the Mishnah is referring only to the impurity imparted by contact or by carrying the earth of the land of the nations. The Rambam says, "V'far hilchah Nazir 7:6 like a Mishnah there in the Sefer Tahara hilchah Tumas Meis 11:1-2. He neither touched something richly impure nor overlaid it. Rather, is it not with regard to the earth that the land of the nations was decreed impure?" The Gemara rejects this proof. No, actually, I could say to you that the decree is due to the heir, and when the Mishnah teaches that he received the sprinkling, it is referring to the other items that are listed in the Mishnah, i.e., e.g. the grave cover or grave walks and a quarter log of blood. The Gemara comments, so too it is reasonable that this is the case from the fact that the Mishnah also teaches and vessels that are touching a corpse. Now, do people who touch these vessels require sprinkling? What does that mean? If an Nazirite touched vessels that came into contact with a corpse, he does not require sprinkling on the third and seventh days. This exception applies only to a Nazirite, so that these days can count towards his term of Naziriteship. Any other individual who becomes ritually impure from these vessels requires sprinkling on the third and seventh days. Sefer Nazir 7:8. Some commentaries cite this as proof that the vessels referred to by the Mishnah are made of materials other than metal. As metal vessels impart rich impurity like the corpse itself, being tam. Others claim that the vessels mentioned in the Mishnah are of all types, including metal ones. Rabbeinu Chaim HaKohen. A Nazirite does not have to shave for them because he shaves only for coming into contact with the corpse itself, not for all items classified as having impurity of a corpse, as the verse says. And if any man dies very suddenly beside him, number 6:9, some claim that a Nazirite does not even need to be sprinkled with water for those sources of impurity. Says Meiri. Does one who touches a vessel that is richly impure from a corpse require sprinkling of purification water? This individual is impure only until that evening. Rather, learn from this that halacha that he is sprinkled on the third and on the seventh day does not refer to all the cases in the Mishnah, but only to some of the others. And that's the end of that Omid. It's short Omid, and I wish you a very good day. All the best. Bye.